Thank you, Sarah. I'm accompanied here, in case you were wondering, by two officials of the U.S. Department of Transportation. I have with me Derek Kahn, Undersecretary of Policy, and Jim Ray, the Senior Advisor to the Secretary for Infrastructure. They're here because of this gift, and so let me proceed. As many of you have heard yesterday, 12 federal agencies have been working with the White House on the comprehensive infrastructure proposal that the President announced yesterday. Transportation is one component. The proposal also includes energy, drinking and wastewater, broadband, and veterans hospitals as well. The goal of the President's proposal is to stimulate at least $1.5 trillion in infrastructure investment, which includes a minimum of $200 billion in direct federal funding. And a key element is to empower decision-making at the state and the local level, because state and local officials know best the infrastructure needs of their communities. Many of you know that the principles are behind this, and so I wanted to reiterate some of the principles. The principles behind this proposal are: one, to use federal dollars as seed money to encourage infrastructure investment by the states, localities, and the private sector. Two, provide for the infrastructure needs of rural communities. Three, streamline project delivery. And four, invest in transformative projects that benefit everyone. We are already applying these principles to the Department of Transportation's major existing infrastructure grant programs, including, for example, the infra grants. And that is why these two gentlemen to my right are here, because their offices will be among those at the Department of Transportation that will be taking the applications and also administering these infra grants. This quarter, as mentioned, the President has generously decided to donate his annual salary to the department's infra grant programs. Infra directly reflects the President's proposal by providing dedicated, discretionary funding for projects that address critical issues facing our nation's highways and bridges and ports. Under the infra program, states and localities that secure some funding or financing of their own are given higher priority access to federal funds. In addition, infra also reserves at least 25% of its funding to be awarded to rural projects. So infrastructure is the backbone of our economy, and it's key to keeping our country competitive. The President's proposal will create new jobs, strengthen our economy, and improve the quality of life for everyone. And so with that quick summary, I'll be more than glad to answer any questions. Yes, John.
Madam Secretary, some of the criticisms of the President's plan as outlined yesterday are that it puts too much of a burden on the states financially, because the federal portion is about 13% of the overall, and might also end up in people paying more taxes, more tolls, that sort of thing. What do you say to that?
You know, federal money is not free. Federal money comes from our communities, people, taxpayers in our communities. They take that money, send it to Washington, and then we decide how to use it and send it back to the communities with a lot of strings attached on what they need to do. So what we are trying to do is to recognize the states and localities, communities understand best what their infrastructure needs are, and to allow them to have much greater flexibility to decide their own projects in conjunction and in partnership with the federal government. Yes, sir.
Thanks, Secretary Chao. One other criticism of the President's plan is that it doesn't include addressing the Highway Trust Fund, which only has so many years ahead of it of funding, just a few years. Can you address why that was not included in the President's broader infrastructure plan, and then what does the administration plan to do about that very important source of funding for infrastructure projects across the country?
Well, the Highway Trust Fund does need to be addressed, because every year more money goes out of it than receipts are received. And this will be a huge problem in 2021. So we, in conjunction with the Congress, have got to address this issue. So we're not in any disagreement about that. And the issue is how. And we look forward to consulting with Congress on how to do that. Because again, the cliff begins in 2021.
So there are no plans. So the White House doesn't have a proposal right now for that.
Well, we don't want to do it unilaterally. As mentioned, the president's proposal consisted of principles, and we want to discuss and work in consultation on a bipartisan basis with the Hill to address the infrastructure needs of our country.
Madam Secretary.
Madam Secretary.
Yes.
Thank you. The crumbling infrastructure, could you talk to us about, we know what's going on with roads, bridges, highways, what have you, but when it comes to rural America, can you give us specifics about what's crumbling, what needs to be fixed, and what jobs will be given where?
Well, I come from the state of Kentucky. I'm a proud Kentuckian, and I come from a rural state, so I am especially concerned about the needs of rural America, and we recognize that the needs of rural America are special, and that is why in the president's proposal, there is actually a provision which addresses the unique needs of rural America. So it will be separate from there's a separate title that is addressed to rural America. And similarly, there's a separate title addressed to transformative technology as well. So for example, Derek Kahn, the Undersecretary of Policy, one of his portfolio areas is transformational technology, autonomous vehicles, automated driving systems. So that is another part of the president's infrastructure proposal that we will be also discussing with the Hill.
Let's take one last question.
Madam Secretary, thank you.
Yes.
Thank you, Secretary Chao. As you know, the federal gas tax has remained at 18.4 cents per gallon since 1993. The U.S. Chamber of Commerce has advocated an increase in the gas tax of 25 cents per gallon. The truckers, the American Trucking Associations, recommended a 20-cent per gallon increase in the gas tax. What's your view on this subject?
Well, the president has not declared anything out of bounds. So everything is on the table. The gas tax, like many of the other pay-fors that are being discussed, is not ideal. There are pros and cons. The gas tax has adverse impact, a very regressive impact on the most vulnerable within our society. Those who depend on jobs, who are hourly workers. So these are tough decisions, which is why, once again, we need to start the dialogue with the Congress, and so that we can address these issues on this very important point.
Could you just clarify your answer to John from the first question? Were you saying there are strings attached, so you're saying that taxes will increase and that tolls may increase or they won't?
That is a decision that is up to the state and local governments. And also, it's going to depend, that gentleman mentioned about federal gas taxes. These are tough decisions. We all want better infrastructure. But unfortunately, there's just not enough money in the world to pay for all the infrastructure, which is why the president's infrastructure also emphasizes the private sector. Private sector pension funds are a tremendous source of capital for funding public infrastructure. There are states which disallow the private sector from investing in public infrastructure. So we hope that those restrictions can be removed. And then for those states and localities that want to work with the private sector, it's their decision as to whether they want to use private activity bonds, whether they want to use tolls, whatever. What we are saying in this proposal is that we're looking for creative ways for financing. And so tolls is one way. We're not advocating for them. We're also not endorsing them. It is really up to the local entities that are involved in trying to raise the financing.
As a quick follow-up, you're from Kentucky, so you well know the Waterston Expressway when it was widened in Louisville, one of the biggest one of the things they liked the best about it, there was no toll. Well, and so in rural areas, it helped people get to where they wanted to go quicker. Here in Washington, D.C. area, you have an abundance of tolls, and it cuts into people's paychecks. So while you're espousing that you want to help out rural America, isn't that going to impact, won't tolls hurt rural America?
That's really, okay, you're mixing up, I think, several things here. I'm so sorry. There's actually going to be a title, as I mentioned, on rural America. So that is separate from the rest of the titles in this proposal that we're talking about. So there'll be a special section for rural America. And then as for whether other urban areas want to embark upon tolls or private activity bonds or asset recycling, that is up to them. We are giving them the flexibility to do so. So it's actually, they're getting much greater flexibility now to be able to look at the panoply of creative financing mechanisms and decide for themselves what they want.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. I'm sure we'll be talking more. Thank you.